Welcome to the Real Estate Experience with myself, Sterling White. You asked the questions on today's episode and I provide the answers. So love these tactical questions, especially when it comes to the acquisition side. That is my bread and butter, along with the marketing as well. But if you have not already grabbed a copy of my book, visit sterlingwhiteofficial.com. That is sterlingwhiteofficial.com to grab your free copy. All you have to do is just pay the shipping. And let me go ahead and take a step way back and if you're just now coming across me, name Sterling White, born and raised in Indianapolis, Indiana, not so good parts of the city where you wouldn't want to walk your dog at night or even during the day. Had a single mother, no father was around. It was just my twin brother and I and her. And so ended up moving from the inner city public schools my freshman year semester. And my freshman year semester of high school, I went to 4 different high schools. That's enough in itself to show you how much I was bouncing around. So ended up moving from the inner city to the township schools, which is significantly better than the public schools, and that was the suburbs. So was still living and grew up on food stamps, subsidized housing, and I'm sure any type of government assistance my mother didn't tell me about. So we were still living in that environment, but the schooling was significantly better from the public schools to the township. Unfortunately, my brother ended up going back to our not so good environment and hung around with those friends, and unfortunately took a not so good path in life. Still alive, but that's a whole nother story in itself, and I took a different trajectory. So got started in real estate 2009 on the construction side. Getting my hands dirty was not about getting my hands dirty, and ended up shifting not to the multifamily but the investing. Able to find a mentor, purchased my first deal, single family residence at the age of 23 years old, and then now just fast forward to where I am now is just under 500 units that's comprised of single family as well as multifamily, and made the shift from single family to multifamily in 2007. But today's question is in relation to owner says no, and this is more on the acquisition side. I have the context on this, is especially when you're doing your outreach to an owner, which is my primary focus, is going direct to an owner of a property versus going through a realtor, agent, or broker. And so I love to use the law, which is Pareto's Principle that he has, which is 80-20. And I'll just use it in relation to just some examples. So in Indianapolis, you look at there's 20% of brokers that are actually doing 80% of the transactions, which I believe is true. It's actually smaller than that. And even with, you can say 20% of the day-to-day or the activities that you have or you complete as far as your business gives you 80% of the results that drives the revenue of your company. So that's kind of what the Pareto's law goes into, and I use that on speaking on relating to acquisition. So that 20% of the actual deals in my pipeline are the ones that I should focus 80% of my efforts on. So when someone says no, it depends on the context. If they just bought the property, or maybe they have just refinanced it and there's a huge prepayment penalty and you're not able to assume the loan, then those are the ones I do not follow up on. I still follow up, but not as frequent as one that the owner seems to be burnt out, they're motivated, they may be a mom and pop mismanaging the asset and there's tons of deferred maintenance. Those are the ones I will focus 80% of my efforts on. So if an owner says no in that scenario, I will follow up a month later. But if someone does not pick up the phone originally, I will follow up 2 days later. But the thing is, what I've experienced on all the multifamily deals that I've acquired, I would say all of them, the person was not raising their hand saying, yes, I am interested in selling. So it took multiple follow-up attempts from the initial contact, they said they're not ready to sell, to then it came down to timing. So I'll give you the 80 unit apartment that I acquired in October of last year. The first initial touch point was 10 months before the actual 10 months prior to the actual closing. So initially it took about 5 to 6 touches just to get in contact with the decision maker. And then it took another 4 months of constant follow-ups, personal visits to the property, love letters, not love letters. It was just letters saying, hey, I'm still here. If anything changes, don't hesitate to reach out to me and give me a call. And then month 4, month 5 rolled around, and boom, they were ready to sell. But I was there constantly staying in touch, even when they said, no, it's not the right timing, or I'm not going to sell. And then of course it took more months to actually close on that, but that was just due to the due diligence. But that just goes into that. It's all about follow-up and being creative with the follow-up. You just have that context and that intuition. If, as I alluded to, if someone just bought the property, or they are in a scenario where they just refinance, then that wouldn't be a good fit. And it's worth focusing your 80% of the efforts of the deals that'll most likely close, and focus your 20% efforts on those ones where someone may have just bought it and you can follow up, let's say 3 or 4 months later, still want to stay in touch, maybe send them a card 2 months later, just as a way to stay top of mind. And it just comes down to building your pipeline. If you build a big enough pipeline, then that allows you to be not so heavily reliant on deals that end up not going through and seem as if you're a little bit desperate. So now we're going to go a little bit into the quote of the day. And if you happen to want me to elaborate on that, don't hesitate to reach out. Slide into the DM is what I said, whether you visit my Facebook page or my Instagram, or even if you're on biggerpockets.com as well. So I am going to go ahead and go into the quote. I am not on a dating app. For those of you, I am pulling up the quote. So the quote here is from Sean Combs, and it says, "Everyone has challenges and lessons to learn. We wouldn't be who we are without them." And that is true. Everyone has their own challenges. It just comes down to how you overcome those. You can use, and I've mentioned this in a previous episode too, is you can definitely use those as a crutch. My first deal that I acquired, I had no credit, had no money to essentially get started, but was able to bridge the gap and look at that as a problem to be solved versus an obstacle. And I see that with others who reached out to me and say that, yeah, I wish I could get started, but I don't have the credit. Okay, what are you doing now to solve that? That's just a problem to reverse engineer. You want to get to, you're at A, you want to get to Z, you just have to reverse engineer to get there. There's blueprints. You can, someone who doesn't have the credit or have the cash, I personally have the blueprint that you can replicate in order to get that first deal or get into the, essentially get into the game. There's just always a way. This goes into something that I have adapted over the years, and this comes to cutting out the news and really feed my mind with positivity, and something that you can leverage too is having a irrational optimism, meaning that I always look at things on the brighter side and that there's always a way. And this is the same with mistakes. Look at a mistake and I could be one of the deals where, so one thing that we can use is one of the deals, syndications that I ended up putting together was didn't raise enough funds, and now having to sell that property because it ended up not working out. It's still a good deal, but it's an okay deal. So end up having to sell it to someone else that's going to be able to reap the benefits in terms of the upside that it does bring. But looked at that as, okay, well, the next deal ended up raising enough funds to be able to take care of all the improvements that were necessary. Could have looked at that as just a mistake and been detrimental, that hey, multifamily putting these deals together is just not a good fit. But no, decided to take that lesson and then use it on the next deal, and then the lessons on that next deal, able to use it on the next one. And many of you know the story about the 118 unit, ended up having to walk away from that after being invested close to $10,000 just in the due diligence period, because ended up getting the roofers out at a later point, and they determined that all the roofs needed it. Well, the vendors out there to place a quote on assessing what needed to be done with the roofs, it was determined that all of them needed to be replaced versus being able to patch. And so ended up taking that lesson on the very next deal and had the seller up front wrote in the contract to replace all the roofs. And it ended up determined that instead of them doing a tear off, they ended up just doing an overlay of the shingles. It was fine, But that was another lesson that was learned too on the next one, is just to have everything in writing. But yeah, that is the answer to the question. Hopefully that provides the necessary context. And if you want me to elaborate, do not hesitate to reach out. Comment below, everyone who's on these. And one thing I want your feedback too is I don't know if my shirts are getting smaller, if I've just been putting on some more muscle. Someone at the office the other day mentioned I'm getting a little bit smaller, and someone else said it too. So been really hitting the gym hard. So we'll love your thoughts on that. That's a little random segue there. And if you haven't already, grab your copy of the book, From 0 to 400 Units. And also I do have a giveaway. Almost forgot to mention that, which is those of you who leave a review on SoundCloud or iTunes, preferably iTunes if you have that, or Spotify, or all those podcasting type platforms, leave a review, send a screenshot to support@sterlingwhiteofficial.com. That is support@sterlingwhiteofficial.com. I will be giving away my due diligence checklist for completely free, in addition to the ultimate guide to buying apartment building. And through that, the due diligence checklist just simply covers everything that you need, or majority of what you need to complete during the due diligence phase of acquiring an apartment. So I'll catch you all on the next episode. Have a phenomenal day. Thanks for listening to The Real Estate Experience. If this has brought you any value, please subscribe and leave a 5-star rating. It would mean the world to me. Now go out there and crush it.